I'm going to do something really different, and I'm going to do a presentation that I've never done before in any capacity. And it's just my mind has been probably like, shit, it's March tomorrow. So like 2.5 months, my head's been really deep in like the business side of everything that we do, and really thinking more strategically about like the aspects of building and growing and sustaining a business. It's what led to the idea for a new product that I'm working on. That's really more of a passion project than anything else. But because it's like so front of mind, that is what I wanted to talk about today. So that is what I'm going to be. So let me know you're able to see my screen. Yes.
Yeah, we're all good, buddy.
All right, cool. So this is going to be sort of a step-by-step breakdown on how to scale some existing form of business. So either a side hustle, a freelance business, or a small agency. something in the $10,000 to $20,000 a month range. Ideally, is where you'd be at right now, and how to get that sort of to the point to the $100,000 per month revenue point, where there's really opportunities to dial in efficiency, delegate the work, get your time back, and like start to really enjoy life a lot more, start to build more of the life you want, and feel less like you're riding a dumpster fire on a roller coaster. But first, just a quick story. So I want to rewind back to 2007. This was my first agency. I'm not in this picture because I'm taking this picture, but these are the 3 guys that I founded it with. This was in a house that we rented. None of our houses were this nice back then. But this was a house that we had rented for a weekend to try to, get all the work knocked out. And that agency was called Automni. And you can see I included an extremely embarrassing sketch that I found from one of like my notebooks at the time, on like when I was trying to come up with ideas for what our first web page might look like. And then there was actually one of that's an actual one of the banners at the top there. That was our website, and that was our phone number at the time. And that was one of the slides that went into our slider. So I was able to actually dig this up too. This is kind of fun. This is what our website actually looked like back then. Pretty big mess overall. Web design has certainly changed a lot in the past 12 years. But we were fortunate enough to actually somehow land clients back then. And I loved my sneaky trick. For anybody who's really into SEO, you'll get it, that the anchors that I have up in the main navigation are actually links that I had in the header file down to those service detail pages, which did allow us to rank for, when it was a much easier time to rank for a bunch of keywords back in the day, like SEO companies, Philadelphia, and user experience design, which didn't really exist back then as a term. But this was our site. And so, if you fast forward to today, I'm not going to make you deal with this whole thing, but I just, it's a kind of a dope video, so I'm going to show it. So if you take that from my first agency and fast forward all the way to today, and you look at, just a couple of quick screen caps of the amazing team I get to work with, and, part of our beautiful space here, at least in our Philadelphia office, it's a whole different world, how it's all come, and, where we were versus where we are now. Again, I'm not going to subject you guys to the whole thing. There we go. And this is our new site that we just launched end of last week. So just a small shout out to my team. I had nothing to do with this, so I can't take any credit. I'm just really proud of everybody that we're able to get this done, because like all agencies, our website is the worst one out of every one that we work on, because all of our time goes into trying to make sure we can deliver for our clients. So a quick clarification on what this is and this isn't. So what this presentation is not going to be is, and the whole point of sort of this latest brainchild that I've put together, is I'm not going to be teaching anybody, a new professional skill, that clients will pay you for. This is how you start a business. This is not, this is how you find something that, like, this is how you create your first product, or this is how you do market research to find out, a service that people will pay you for. That's all like just basic hustling. That's like entrepreneurism 101. So like, I can't teach you how to hustle and get your first contracts. If you had in point 3 is further clarification, sort of how to figure out your own shit and get the ball moving. This is way more about you've gotten a little bit of traction, you put in the time and energy, you're feeling exhausted, you don't have a framework for like how to take it from where you are to where you want to get it. This is that framework. This is specifically on how to scale. The quick obligatory about me slide. So this new like little pet project I'm running is called 7F Agency. Currently the founder and CEO from the future. I'm the co-founder of a digital asset investment company called NK Tech Ventures. A partner at Traffic Think Tank with Ian Howes and Matt Barbie. And in the past, I've built and sold. So that first agency back in the day at Tomny, we ended up actually building a CMS that we called Molecule, which is at the time sort of, now it seems like funny foreshadowing that I've got an agency called From the Future, and I built CMS back in the day called Molecule, because it feels like there's a connection there, even though there's probably not. But it was like a super thin, lightweight CMS built on CodeIgniter. But Dietz and Watson ended up buying the company from us just because of that piece of software, not because we were a good agency or we had any of our shit together. Then went on to build a Japanese consumer review website that me and a very small team, considering, was able to scale to a few million visits per month in organic traffic before selling it 18 months later. Then I sold a shitty blog that I built and a lead gen business, an SEO lead gen business that I used the blog to build. Sold the lead gen business first to an agency in San Diego, and then sold the blog afterwards. Sold countless domains, dozens of lead gen websites, and of course, I have sold my soul to Google. So the point of what I want to sort of get into today and run through is this spot that folks who get a freelance or side hustle type business, to $5,000-$10,000 a month and decide to make the jump full time and are able to hustle and grind and get that, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month reoccurring revenue in client contracts. They sort of end up in this pool, the agency owner pool, I like to call it, where they're just treading water. And the reason they're treading water is because they've got these three core issues that they don't really have an idea on how to figure out. And those are sales, resources, and profitability, all of which you need to not only sustain, but to build a baseline and a foundation for growth. And the most common issues when I talk to agency owners, which I do every single day, because there's 300 or so of them in Traffic Think Tank that I get direct access to and I get to talk to and work with, which is like what helped me realize like why I'm so passionate about working with other agency owners, because it's this, there's like a sadism to it, and I almost feel guilty enough that I just want to help folks, is that when it comes to sales, they don't really have a plan. Like there's not really any predictability to where the next sale is coming from. If they get leads in the door, they have some way to generate new leads, even if it's just, cold outreach emails and LinkedIn pitches. They don't have a process for how to nurture those leads along through, to a close. They don't have any sales management skills. They don't understand what it is to build a pipeline, manage that pipeline, have strategies to move stuff from a warm lead to a warm qualified lead to a pitched lead to a qualified pitched and priced lead to a closed sale. That the skills that come with actually selling. So not just lead gen, but how to qualify that lead and then pitch them and then close them. And then ultimately it's sort of at the very top of the funnel. Most people are sort of lost on how to generate leads in the first place, which is why you see all of this continuous stream of these new LinkedIn pitches that everybody watching this gets, and you kind of wish you could reach through LinkedIn and squeeze people by the neck and sometimes rip their heads off because of how annoying all of the LinkedIn pitches are for you. Like, are you looking to generate more leads for your agency? We have a proven framework for blah, 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 bullshit on how to generate leads for LinkedIn. And I've tested 4 or 5 of them over the past 2 years. I think one and I'm not going to call them out, but they're very famous, but it's not my business to ruin their business. But we spent 40 grand with them, $4 grand a month for 10 months, didn't generate a single lead, not one fucking lead. Because we sell a premium service and they don't understand our business. So they don't know how to sell our business. Like, you are always going to be the best fit to generate leads for your business. Don't outsource your lead gen, build systems for lead gen, which moves me on to resources. So getting the initial traction for a team, I think, is the hardest part. I think getting to like that point where you have enough revenue and you have enough demand and sort of management that you can get to 5 employees, I think is the hardest part. Most small agency owners, consultants, freelance grind experts are, managing disparate groups of contractors and remote employees. They don't have any documentation. There's no training for those folks. They don't understand the separation of duties and like how certain contractors should be specialized in certain areas. And they're lacking just general systems for accountability to understand like what is the utilization rate of their resources. And then the last part is like business management 101. And this is something that if I could like go talk to, the agency owner, V1 of myself in 2007, I would probably smack myself across the face and say, like go spend the little money that you have and hire an accountant. Like find an accountant that understands small business or understands the agency business model. And like even if you hire an accounting coach if you need it. Like there's so much money lost, squandered by agency owners because they don't understand like the structures that are built to like help them hold on to more of their money.
Can I interrupt you for a minute, Nick?
Go for it.
I absolutely agree with you. This stuff is so crucial, and we've wasted over like the last 8 years, I don't know how much time and money, because like I know basic accounting, like working with someone that truly understands this stuff, the amount of money, it might seem scary at first to go hire an accountant that you're paying a good chunk of your initial agency's money to. Well worth it. And understanding the stuff that it looks like Nick's going to talk about, super important stuff.
Yeah, it's wild though. Like how much like we put off getting like hiring a professional accountant. Like we used H&R Block for FTF back when it was IFTF in 2014, when it was like a just a tax shelter for like me personally and like my master key research revenue. Like I used an H&R Block consultant that I found out later like cost me tens of thousands of dollars in additional taxes and was just an idiot. It took a couple, like I had to jump through a few hoops. I fell victim in 2015 to a really slick marketing campaign from a guy who has a company called Startup CPA. It wasn't until we started, I met with and talked to like a more, experienced accountant for like a much bigger company that I ran into at an event somewhere and started asking him some questions to realize that like my guy was also kind of an idiot. It took a couple tries to really find somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about. But it is night and day. Between that as like step one and like the next step being like hiring a bookkeeper, like even a part-time 5-hour-a-week bookkeeper to get you set up on QuickBooks and to like consolidate like all of your expenditures each week. Really understanding how that works, just from the accounting. And then outside of accounting, there's these other two pieces, which is like one is like having arbitrary pricing models. So like I can't tell you how many times I talk to agency owners or I talk to independent consultants and they tell me their prices and I'm like, okay, cool. If that's your price, like what's that based on? Oh, that's just the market price rate. Based on what? That's what I heard, Joe Schmo is billing. Okay, but like you don't know what Joe Schmo's cost structures are. You don't know what his resource structures are. Like you don't know what his lifestyle is. Like prices should never just be made up. Like, yeah, like you're gonna have a range for any industry, but like your prices should always be based on a minimum gross and net profit margin based on like what your cost structure is or will be in the next 6 to 12 months. And which leads me sort of into like another thing that most first-time founders and especially agency owners do is they don't take advantage of the fact that like an LLC is a fantastic pass-through entity until you get to a point where you want to pay yourself a salary. And then a lot of people think they have to make the jump to being an S Corp and don't realize like you can set your, you can elect to be taxed as an S Corp and still remain being an LLC. And the reason you want to be an LLC still is not just for the protection, but because LLCs can be owned by other LLCs, whereas S Corps cannot be owned by other LLCs. So like you limit your recapitalization potential by like either starting or sticking with the wrong legal entity. Cool. Moving on. So these are the pools of crap that you're drowning in, and then I would say these are the three biggest problems that are driving that drowning. And those buckets are agency owners' inability to manage their priorities, their time, and their profit. The general issues with priority management is that everything is important, their hair is on fire, and if everything is important, you just say nothing is, and that's a reoccurring theme that you'll see again here. But they're lacking a process for priority identification. They don't have any systems for accountability for holding themselves to priorities, let alone their resources or employees. And there's just a general lack of focus on what the big initiatives actually are. There seems to never be enough time. This especially is the case if it's just you and like 2 or 3 freelancers on Upwork, or like you and like 1 or 2 local contractors who might even be in your same country, and then you've got like a handful of contractors that you're trying to juggle, or VAs. You're working 60 hours a week or more. There's no concept of time management there, and you don't have any system for managing your time. Like there's nothing standing in the way of people, whether it's your clients or your employees, or chasing down new sales leads, taking up your time and eating as much of your time as they want to. And then profit always seems to be the last element of any new business or young business that gets attention. And the reason it gets so neglected is because nobody tracks it. And nobody tracks because nobody wants to. It's not fun to track profit and to realize like you have money coming in and you're able to pay yourself and just enough to keep the lights on. You can pay your rent and you can pay your utilities, and you have enough to like get, most people on here aren't going to understand what a Philly special is, but it's a PBR and a shot of Jack Daniels. But like, they're $5 pretty much at any dive bar in Philadelphia, but you may have just enough to get yourself the Philly special that you need every Friday night. But you're not making any money. And the reason you're in a profit break even, or even potentially a profit loss situation where you're living on credit is you're not passing through eligible expenses. Your prices are too low. You're not including soft cost and variable cost in your consideration for your prices, and you're not tracking like the actual performance and resource utilization of your team members. So the solution is actually really easy. It's implementing a systems model. Very simple concept, very hard to execute without guidance. But every single common agency problem, can be fixed with a system design, by putting a system in place to address and refine and ultimately fix these problems within the management structure of your agency. How do you implement a systems model? And the answer is painfully simple as well. It's just like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. So you have to start someplace. And this is the first piece of the framework. And this is a very simplified version of a framework. I'm taking 12 months of training and I'm condensing it down into what will probably be a 40-minute presentation. So stick with me that this is a little oversimplified, but the concepts are the bedrock of everything you need to be focusing on. So it all starts with time management. If you don't have time to be working on the right things that are going to move the ball along for your agency or your small company, it doesn't matter what, without the time, you're not going to get shit done. So you need to put something in place that can be your gatekeeper. And the best thing to do to start with there is to be your calendar. Use your calendar as a roadmap, make that roadmap intentional each and every week, block out time. So all of the time is accounted for. There's a place for everything and everything is in its place. Once you have created time and allocated that time to your priorities, or in order to allocate the time to your priorities, you need to understand what those priorities are. The way to do that is to list out the tasks and activities that you should be working on, and focus on the concept. And I'm going to get back to this a little bit later, but focus on the concept of your one thing. What is the one thing you need to be doing every day? Learning how to delegate is wildly difficult. Everybody talks about it. It's stupid hard to do. It gets easier, again, if there's a process behind it. If you have a process to use to support how to delegate, the actual activity of delegating become much easier. To start doing that, you want to group your finite tasks together. Finite means that there's a start and a finish. It's a task that you can actually check off and say, yes, that task is done. Like sending out invoices, for example, or creating invoices so they can be reviewed, so then they can be sent out. Like right there, that's 3 finite tasks. But starting to think about tasks in finite chunks and then grouping them together. Once you've got your time freed up, you know what your priorities are, and you've delegated out the things that you shouldn't be working on so you can focus on your priorities, then you have to work on crafting your offer. An initial offer should be a high value offer, a trust offer, as I like to call it, and you're going to need to start testing it. The first 2 or 3 you create, maybe the first 5 you create, they probably will fail. You'll sell 1 or 2, but you're not going to build a business on them. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue to try to sell those offers. It just means they need refinement, and you may need additional offers. And the way that you're going to get to test those offers is by starting to build sustainable sources of fuel for those offers, or an engine that will generate leads for you on a daily, weekly, or a monthly, weekly, and daily basis. So diving into each of these first. So again, here's our first 5 sprint items on the framework. We're going to dive into the first one. So again, time management. You need a gatekeeper. It's the only way it's ever going to work. Fortune 1000 companies have executive assistants. You don't have probably the $50, $60, $80, $100,000 you're going to need to hire a qualified executive assistant. That's not going to take a tremendous amount of time for you to train around your business and how you want to operate your schedule and your time, so you can use your calendar. But in order to use your calendar, it needs to be intentional, and you need to do it every week. You need to build a habit around it. Plan your entire week, put that shit in your calendar, and start to wrap your mind around the very simple phrase that you tell to every single person in your life, your partners, your spouse, your employees, everybody. If it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. Honor that, respect that, make other people honor and respect it too. You'd be amazed how much of a difference it makes. Delegation. First part about delegating is understanding that you're doing shit right now that you shouldn't be. Every single thing you do every single day has value. Sometimes that value is a lot. Sometimes it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for an hour. Sometimes it's very little. Invoicing, to come back to that example, is a great example. Creating an invoice is a $10, $15 an hour task. Reviewing those invoices should be you to start, but eventually that can be handed off probably pretty quickly. Sending out those invoices is a $5 an hour task. You're probably doing all three of them right now. And that's taking your time away from focusing on much higher value operations, because you're doing work that you shouldn't be. Value by definition has a price, and you need to start paying other people to do the low value activities. The easiest way to do that, again, is to map out what's finite and measurable so you can put a price tag on it. Coming back to the idea of prioritization. So you need to focus on your one thing. There are activities that you are doing every day as a business owner, as an agency owner, that only you can do. It'd be, and the way to think about that is it would be way too expensive for you to get somebody else that can execute them at the level that you can. This may be talking to clients. This might be building proposals, having pitch calls with clients, client management, and probably more so than anything, the strategy, like creating the strategy that you're selling to your clients, is something that if you had to go hire somebody else to hire somebody else to do that was going to execute it at the same level that you are, it would be wildly expensive and it would destroy your margins. So that's what you need to be focusing on doing. Just focusing on the high value tasks and activities, and getting all of the other crap that you shouldn't be doing off your plate. But you need to have those buckets, those priority buckets created, and they need to be clearly defined if you're going to start the process of handing off that work and delegating the work that's not your priority. This is an abstract idea, and it's hard to try to fit this in, because I spent an entire month on this in the program. So it's hard to try to talk through this in just a few minutes, but designing your offer. And the best way to figure out what an offer is starting first with agitation. Like, what creates the most agitation for your customers? It doesn't have to be like your solution and your offer are two different things. When it really comes down to it, a solution is more long-term. It's a partnership. It's an engagement. Your offer is not your engagement. It's not your hourly price. It's not your minimum retainer. Your offer is packaged like a product. It's low cost, but it's very high value. It sets a very clear expectation. It creates a roadmap that in and of itself creates clarity and offers value, but it's not the execution of those roadmap items. It's just the roadmap of themselves. It's the design of what that roadmap is, and it needs to scratch the itch to create trust, which is why I like to call it a trust offer, but create trust and fulfill that sort of smoke and mirrors feeling that a lot of customers have, that you're probably, that a lot of customers or potential clients get from a lot of the other consultants or agencies that they're talking to. And you can use that as your basis for separation. It's what makes you different. Again, figuring out what that offer is going to take some time. So like a good example is for us, when we were purely a technical SEO agency, so before our 2 acquisitions last January, one of our offers that we ran a couple cold outreach campaigns around was offering a free site crawl. At first, we offered a free site audit. We were offering the same thing, we were calling it something different. People's expectations for what an audit was were way higher, because an audit means something different than a crawl. So like, we learned very quickly after doing a few phone calls that like, we had screwed up our offer by one word. When we replaced the word audit with the word crawl, people suddenly, the perception of value was much, much higher. We were offering to do a free crawl for any of the websites that we reached out to, up to 100,000 pages. And then we would diagnose the top 5 or 6 things wrong with those sites on a half-an-hour phone call. And that was all free. And there's no lower cost than free. So if you can do a free offer, it's great. You may not be able to do a free offer at first. one thing that we had also done as a separate test was to offer a $1,000 audit for sites up to 100,000 pages. That worked reasonably well. It didn't work as well as a free offer. No paid offer will ever work as well as a free offer. But that offer, again, it needs to create trust. It needs to display value, and it needs to give a roadmap. The beautiful part about showing people a site crawl and talking them through a bunch of dashboards that we're showing them on a screen share from Deep Crawl is we can very clearly show them all the shit on their site that's messed up, and we can talk about why it's affecting them poorly and what they can do to fix it. We're not fixing it, but we're just telling them what's wrong, and we're telling them how to fix it. You'd be amazed at what that does for generating, requests for proposals. This is, again, I spent like 2 months on this, so it's really hard to try to talk through this. But the idea is, I hope I can at least get through the idea, and that is the idea of building a growth engine. This is often misconceived. This term has become somewhat ubiquitous within just the startup marketing SaaS agency world, which is cool because I love the idea of a growth engine. I think it's an accurate reflection, but it's not a single thing. It's not. The problem, I think, is people hear growth engine and they think of a singular thing. They think of an engine like an engine from a car. It's this one thing, and you need one engine, and that engine will run your car for as long as you put gas in it and oil it and all that other shit. And while that's true for a car, you're running a business. It's not a car. So it's not a single thing you build one time. Building a true growth engine is an endless process, and that process is of addition. You're constantly building new cogs, and you're putting those cogs in place all over the internet, and you're putting a little bit of time into them to test them, to spin the flywheel, spin those cogs, create lead flywheels. The ones that start to work, put more attention in, make them as big as you can. But the idea is that they're sustainable and that they're self-sustaining more than anything. Once you get them up and running, leave them be, go on and build another one, and then build another one, and then build another one. A big part of what I do when I dive into this in the program is I actually show all the different lead growth engine components that I've built for my agency, and I break down like all of the specific data, and I show all the leads that each one sends every single month, week, and day. I think it really helps to paint a complete picture of the why and the how. But it's, again, I just don't have time to get into like that whole thing right now. So once you've got those first 5 pieces knocked out, and again, this is a gross oversimplification because I didn't include sales in here, like the actual process, like creating a sales process, because it's a whole one of these in and of itself. Like sales process, can be broken down into a 5-step linear vector, if you will, just on its own. So this is also oversimplified, but I'll come back to sales a little bit. But this is, again, just picking up where we left off from the last piece. So your process design. People get like hives when they hear that word. Do you have processes? Do you have documentation? Like, it makes your eyes glaze over. You might feel cramps in your stomach or constipation. Like, everybody hates and loathes the idea of doing what is maybe only exciting to tax accountants. But it's the only way you're ever going to be able to be effective. And so you have to start somewhere. And what I've found is that it's not hard to start building process documentation and designing your processes if you break them down into tiny little bite-sized chunks. And that's best done with checklists. Like starting to think through what the exact things are that you do when you are creating a deliverable, not a strategy, but the deliverable that helps, explain that strategy and the execution process around that strategy to your clients. Starting by breaking that down into a checklist and then making smaller checklists from those checklists. So those can be easily handed off to specialist resources, which I'll come back to a little bit more a little bit later. When it comes to finding your team, first and foremost, every single time I've built a company, at all seven of the companies that I currently own and operate, it's always an operations person. It's the first person you have to find. Find somebody that you can pay $30 to $50 an hour, 20 hours a week, and hand off all of the operations of your company to them. So you can just focus on strategy and creating world-class deliverables and really being the brand and sales advocate for the company. Once you get that operations person, then you and that person can focus on building your processes around specialization. And the reason you want to have that specialization from your initial contract resources is it allows you to measure and refine and report on efficiency. The only way you're going to be able to get efficient team members is if you have an agile style of management. I'm going to give you like a specific trick that I use over and over and over again in this deck in just a few minutes. But implementing a simple resource tracking system One that we've just started using internally because we've tried 100 different systems for time tracking, and they've all failed miserably because everybody fucking hates time tracking because it's miserable. But you need to have it. It is wildly important, the level of visibility that it gives you in your performance. We just started using one called Clockify. Totally free. They have some paid options, but you don't need them. The free version has a Chrome extension. It integrates directly with Google Calendar. It's awesome. And the management reporting level that you get on the admin side is incredible. Then, as you're able to manage your team in an agile sense, to focus on building more efficiency by specializing your resources to support your processes, you can put more of your time and energy as the strategic focus person within your company on, again, refining your offer. You're not going to get it right the first time. You have to work on changing the features, the language, the timeline. Sometimes one other thing that just anecdotally that we've gotten wrong was we used to take 2 weeks to get back one of our offers delivered, and we thought that was okay because we were offering it for free. And at that point, there had been so much distance created in our prospects' mind that we had to remind them who we were and why they were talking to us and why we deserved their time in the first place. So cutting that down, like putting the time in to figure out, like, how can we make this offer smaller and more manageable? What other pieces can we automate? What pieces can we offload to more specialized, bite-sized resources so we can get this offer turned around in 5 days or less, drastically increase the effectiveness rate of that individual offer. And then lastly, and this is I'm glossing over, probably one of the most important concepts for any agency, and that is if you aren't able to retain your clients, you can't grow. If all you're doing is replacing revenue every 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whenever your contracts are up, or God forbid, whenever if you're getting fired based on, the exercising of termination clauses before your contracts are fulfilled, you're constantly having to replace that revenue just to make ends meet and just to maintain the same level of revenue. There's no possibility of you growing. So starting to build systems for leveraging automation for client touch. One of my favorite ones is taking an email. Like if you have a newsletter that you use, it can be simple. It can be plain text, and it can be 3 links to things you read. And if you have one of your $4 an hour resources put that together for you on a MailChimp list using MailChimp, where you can have a free account as a new young agency. If you have less than 2,000 subscribers in there, you only put your clients on there. It'll be free for likely your first 12 months of using it. If you're only using it, if you want to count just for clients, you can have them send this out and then hook up an automation where 2 days later, after that gets sent out, you automatically reply to everybody, either everybody that didn't open it or everybody on the list, the whole effing thing. And in that, you have it just say, hey, first name, just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. How's everything going? And then it, let me know, thanks, Nick. And that's all it is. And it looks like you personally went in and you forwarded that email back to them and you wrote that, even though you didn't. It looks and feels personal. 99% of people are going to think that you actually took the time to do that. It's just, and that works well in the beginning, or that works well when you get to, that works well when you get to larger scale from a client perspective. But in the beginning, if you've got 50 or less, realistically 20 or less clients, you should be talking to every one of your customers every single month. Nothing is going to create a higher percentage of retention than actually getting on the phone with your folks and building that relationship and maintaining that rapport. So building your process. I'm going to drill into each of these now. So this is not a new concept, but it's really hard to make things simple. So the best way to do that is for each service you provide, each activity that goes into those services, run through it and do it yourself. Write down each of the steps. Be meticulous. I encourage OCD here. The way to make this painful one time, but very painless going forward, is by putting the time and energy you would into actually building the service, delivering the service with your clients, into creating these how-to checklists, and then go through and shoot a screencast. It'll take you, anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes probably, and it's just you talking over what you're doing on the screen. That's all it needs to be. You don't need software. You don't need anything formal to make this happen. This can be very simple and rough and tactical, and you'd be amazed at how well it works. As you're building out your first team, you will likely not need a team of probably more than 10 to 15 people, depending on what kind of agency it is, to get you to the $1 million mark. I know that sounds crazy, but that's really about all it takes if you manage it right. But you need to make sure that you are mapping that team structure out the right way. So like I said, underneath you want to find an operations manager first and foremost. This is somebody you may want to offer equity to. If you offer them equity, you may be able to get away with paying them slightly less per hour, and that cash flow is going to be critical for you in the beginning. If you're willing to or can afford to pay them a higher wage per hour, maybe hold on to some of that equity. The other person is likely somebody who's going to be a client lead. You may not be able to have this person right out of the gate. You may need to be that person as well. But in a perfect world, at least in my experiences, you'll have a partner, and so you guys can divide and conquer. You can have somebody who is the client lead, who is the client champion. They're essentially the client strategist for the company. They're the person who builds the rapport and maintains the relationship with all of your clients, while you are the head of your brand, the face of your brand, and running sales. For those top two sort of critical positions, ideally they're local. My one hard rule, at least for myself and my companies, is that they must be in the same time zone. That's why our other office is in Miami. It doesn't matter that they're over a 3-hour flight away. They're in the same time zone, so we're able to get the same amount of work done at the same time, same business hours. It just makes things a lot easier. The next layer of resources within your agency should be focused on just your deliverables. So again, you're creating the strategy. Your strategy is going to stipulate a deliverable of some kind. That's going to be a document, a spreadsheet, a video, design. It really depends on what you are and what you're doing. It could be the installation of the office furniture that your agency sells in a high-end custom commercial consulting firm business. I don't know, but there's going to be a level where you need resources that are just focused on the creation and delivery of those deliverables themselves. You're going to have to pay them. You can pay them less, obviously, than your operations person and your partner. They're going to require the most training. That's where you can start. That's not where you want to start with your process design and documentation. That would be the second level, because they're going to be more intensive, but they should be contractors to start. That lets you not have to worry about the whole additional levels of taxation. So maintain them as 1099s, makes things a lot easier. Ideally, you want a mix of these people, either at an hourly rate focus, or you're able to negotiate a flat rate, ideally. Then the very bottom row, these are the people that you're going to be creating your process design and documentation for first. They require the least amount of training. These are usually processes that take that in an individual capacity can take anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes each to complete. This could be something as simple as finding an email address, creating invoices, sending out those invoices, reconciling payroll. If you get to a point where you've got permissions all set up in something like FreshBooks or Harvest, but these are going to be the lowest cost per hour, and they're essentially just supporting roles. The more specialization you have, the easier it is to find these people, the less that you need to pay them, and the more replaceable that they become, which is all really important, because at that level in the organization, you're going to have very high turnover. Here is one of my favorite productivity hacks. This was introduced to me in 2009 when I was building Factor Media. And it scales beautifully, and it scales entirely through an entire organization. You will get to a point where this won't make sense anymore, or you may not want to do this anymore, but this will always make sense to some level of the organization, because there is no point where any company, even at thousands of people, gets too big that this doesn't scale. If your company is created in a way where there is a delineation of departments. So I call it a 3x3. And what it is every single person that you're paying, contractor, external resource, VA, your partner, whoever it is, every single person you're paying should be creating one of these emails every single day that they're working. It should be sent as the absolute last thing that they do for the day. So you want to instruct them, and this is something that it's hard for people to do. It takes a little bit of course correction, but you may notice, especially if you begin to have folks who come in and work for you, and they're in your office. So you're at you rented a small office, or you have co-working space membership, something like that. You may notice that people open up this draft email and they're taking notes on it all day long, and that's wrong. That's not what it's meant to be, because it should be a sort of a mental reflection from that person on what they did for the day. And it's called a 3x3 because it's 3 topics, and each topic has up to 3 bullets. What those are, before I'm getting ahead of myself. Another reason that it's really important, this is the last thing that they do, and that you should make sure that they understand that this should never take more than 5 minutes, is so you know when they stopped working. You know when they finished for the day. So you have a relative sense of when they worked till, or when their last hours that they're logging for as billable hours should be ending. But the three things they're gonna include in the email are gonna be, what are their three biggest accomplishments for the day, the three most important questions they have, or up to the three most important questions they have, and then up to the three biggest roadblocks that are standing in their way from any additional accomplishments. These get sent to the person that these report to. So if you've got an operations manager, everybody who's on the operation, all the resources on the operations side, they're going to write this all to the operations manager, and they're going to all send it to the operations manager. If you've got a partner who is the client lead, anybody who's underneath them on the side, on their side of the business, they're working on deliverables, or they're in support roles where they're sending data or information, or they're doing formatting for the people who are responsible for doing and delivering the deliverables. They all get sent. The people underneath the deliverable people send these emails to the deliverable people. The deliverable people each aggregate any people that work underneath them that they manage. And again, they distill them down into a 3x3 list. Those go to the client lead. The client lead then takes all of them and distills them down into the 3x3 list. The operations person distills them down to a 3x3 list, and then you get one only from the people who report into you. So in terms of a tree structure, this scales all the way out. You'll get to a point where it will become overwhelming, because inherent 10 plus employees, suddenly getting things distilled down to three things in each area becomes a task in and of itself that ruins the efficiency of this. But up until that point, it works beautifully. And it will work all the way to the $1 million revenue mark, I promise. So refining your offer and your product. So like I was saying, this is a process of continuous creation and then getting client feedback. So ideally, you'll have multiple entry points for offers for clients to choose from. That's going to be based on your growth engine. But once you have a growth engine that's sort of up and running, even if it's only dripping in a few new leads that you're not directly sourcing yourself each month, you want to have those growth engine sources mapped directly to a specific offer. Those growth engines themselves should start to push and generate requests for specific offers that you're out there. If you're seeing that you're getting traffic to your growth engine components, you're getting clicks through them, but you're not seeing any sort of conversion on the offers, you're not getting any requests for those offers, start first by changing the pricing. After changing the pricing, work on changing the messaging. And if it's not the messaging or the pricing, it may simply be something that nobody wants. Again, there's a rubric for how to go about creating and refining your product offer and how to align those offers with the individual growth engine components. I go into this again for like an entire month within the program. So this is probably the most oversimplified slide in this whole thing, because there's no way I'm going to teach any of you guys how to sell in a few minutes. But generating leads is simply not enough. Even if you get really good at generating leads, you need a process for selling and for closing. But the bare basics, the bare minimum, the things you need right away out of the gate before you close your first contract is really need a process for discovery. This is a series of questions to make sure that you're getting what's most important to your client, what their biggest pain points are out of them, so you can craft your pitch deck and customize a pitch deck. High impact pitch deck is only 20% customizable. Again, that's a big topic to get into on another day, but for the pieces of your pitch deck that you're customizing, they should be customized to specifically support the components of the discovery information that you acquired during that discovery call or piece of the process. Your pitch, part of selling these days includes transparent pricing. I'm a very big advocate for this. If you don't believe me, go check out the latest post on nickeubanks.com. And then lastly, where a lot of consultants and agency owners run into friction or create unnecessary friction is in the contract and SOW process. It's 2019. People are signing contracts often from their phones. You need a contract process that is an SOW and sometimes potentially an MSA or master services agreement. You need one that it protects you, holds you so completely, insulates you from liability for changes to Google's algorithm if you're an SEO person. But really, in any industry, there needs to be limitations that liability. They need to be created in a way that is spelled out, that really does protect you from shit going horribly wrong and your life being taken away by a lawsuit, but also makes the signing and execution of that contract as painless as possible for your clients. And then lastly, so retaining clients, just to go through this again, your clients must always feel important. Treat them like they're important. So they feel important until you have, I'm saying again, 50 plus, but I mean, that may seem overwhelming. I would say, up until at least your first 20 clients, speak to every client every month. You personally, the business owner, ask them probing questions. If you don't know what a probing question is, do a little bit of Googling, but there's ways to ask questions where you'll get more information than you ask for, all of which will be helpful. But invest in their opinions and in their happiness. Your clients are the ones writing you checks. They're keeping you in business. They're growing your business. Their happiness is literally your happiness. I'd love to help you. If you want the help, you can go to that website right there for more information. The program will be launching in the middle of next month. And so I'd like to open it up for questions.
Awesome stuff, buddy.
Awesome, yeah. A lot of good stuff there that I think people don't know. I certainly learned the hard way about a lot of this stuff, and it's going to save you a lot of money and a lot of time if you at least look into this stuff if you're not, using Nick's training program.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of points in the that we've been trying to figure out how to implement. So now we'll just steal Nick's implementation.
If you're in the United States and you're making decent money and you're still operating as an LLC and not being taxed as an S corporation, you need to go talk to an accountant.
Yeah. Or just or file. It's like a 1042 form, whatever it is. Yeah, just change your tax.
Yeah. That's what I did, and big. Yeah. Lots of money.
Not those dodgy ones that Nick mentioned earlier in his presentation.
Also, I mean, if you're an agency business and you have clients and you have more than one car and you're paying for one of your two cars with post-tax dollars, or you're paying for your cell phone bill with post-tax dollars, or your home internet and cable bill, or 100% of your rent or mortgage, it just goes on and on and on. All these things are pre-tax expenses, and if you're paying for them with post-tax dollars, you're lighting money on fire.
Hey, Nick, I know a lot of agency owners at this level have a lot of trouble kind of letting go of control, because they've done everything themselves for so long. What on your team building display that you had up, that first level of your operations manager and client lead, where are you going to find that person or those people, and how long are you evaluating them before you actually pull the trigger and say, that's my guy?
So I have I'm going to fall victim to exactly what you're saying. I'm a perfect example of somebody who was sort of afraid to let go of control. So what I've done is I've always stuck within my network. First and foremost, I'll look within my personal network. But then when my personal network doesn't work, I'll extend out to my professional network. Usually I'll start locally first. I've also leveraged the YEC for this as well for another company. But finding people who have I look for traits more than experience. Perfect example is the current CFO of FTF right now. Was a recovering tax accountant from PwC. He fucking hated being an accountant. But in order to become a certified public, in order to become a CPA, you need to be meticulous and you need to be ruthless about deadlines. Those are the prerequisites for being an accountant, and those are exactly what I want in a CFO. He's now the CFO. Before he was our CFO, he was our COO. Before he was our COO, he was our director of operations, and before that, he was my operations manager. He was the first employee that I ever hired back when IFTF was IFTF in 2015, when I had just enough money to pay somebody. The year that he got brought on, so IFTF, the company, did 80 grand in revenue in 2014. I brought him on in the beginning of 2015, and we did 400 grand. Again, this was all side hustle. And then that's 14, 15, 2016, we did 800 grand. And then 2017 was the first year we broke $1 million. I think we did 1.6, and that's it was the end of 2017 that I actually left Traffic Safety Store and was like, well, shit, this $1 million, I have $1 million business just sitting over here. I should probably go do something about it.
There you go. So you're a fan of promoting internally and having them work their way up the ranks a little bit too, rather than an outside hire, because I agree with that too, because you build the trust up over time and you know that this guy knows everything down the chain as far as operationally.
What's fascinating is very few of the folks that work here now at the agency now that were outside hires are in the role that they got hired for.
Right.
A lot of times they come in and they're like, ooh, I know I got hired to do this, but I see this thing over here that I think I would be much better at. Can I go do that instead? And I'm a really big fan of the top grading principle around redeployment. So if somebody's not happy and getting fulfillment out of a job, and they're essentially they're creating a B player jacket on themselves, but they have a potential to be redeployed into a new role and become an A player, I'm going to take that opportunity.
How do you handle that transition if there's not a spot open for them in a different department, or if they're going to leave a void from where they're leaving from?
We're literally doing this right now. So one of the person who came in to run our client strategy team came in and was like, hey, like I know that like we're looking to make an HR hire. I would actually really like to do that. I'd like to be that role. So we laid it out. It's like, well, like you're not worth losing. So let's put a plan in place, like, and say like, all right, over 6 months, you're going to transition out of your current role. Like, so like we know that we're gonna have to hire somebody to replace you, but we're not gonna have to go find a new person to fill this open role that we had for an HR person. So we're gonna transition you slowly while you bring on and train your replacement. And I think we're about 4 months, 3 or 4 months into it, and it's going really well so far.
So that plan kind of takes the hecticness out of that change and allows the person to straddle both roles until there's a clear-cut replacement, and also until you know that they're the right fit for the new role.
Yeah, and the plan like involves like peeling off bits of their old job responsibility as those get sort of absorbed by their replacement like each month. So like literally each week, like a little bit more comes off, and it just sort of whittles away until it's all gone.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of this over at Word Agent, so I've definitely skipped a lot of these steps. So I'm spending 2019 retroactively implementing them to make sure that our internal infrastructure is in the right place for future growth. But it's awesome that you're doing this, man. I think you're gonna have a lot of good adoption of seven-figure agency, right? That's the name of it.
Yeah, it's a corny name. I couldn't think of. I couldn't think. It was the first name that popped into my head. And then when I got that 2-letter domain, I was like, well, I guess this is it now.
There you go, man. It's awesome.
Couple of quick questions that are on topic before time for the off-topic ones. Andrew Ansley asks, Nick, are you one of those employers that evaluates Myers-Briggs type personality tests prior to hiring, or does that not matter to you? I promote hire people and I can't seem to really figure out who would be a good fit, struggling to make this process easier, and curious if you have any tips for hiring remotely.
We have not. So our remote employee base is very small. It's like a handful of total people, and our remote employees are extremely specialized. Like we have one guy that I think only does 3 things. Like he does our GA audit, our GSC and GTM audits, and he does like more advanced analytics implementations for like e-commerce tracking and like goal and event tracking and stuff like that. But like that's all he does. Just because I feel like one thing that I have learned, like trial by fire, is that, and this seems to hold up the more entrepreneurs I talk to, is your team either needs to be completely remote or not at all. Because sort of the half and half, 70-30, 60-40 models just don't really seem to hold up. At least nobody's figured out, I think, how to make it work yet, myself included. On the Myers-Briggs front, I love the idea behind it. And initially for my first handful of employees, I did go through the top grading process for each of them, which I still believe in. I've gotten, I'll be honest, I've gotten like, I don't know, sort of sloppy on that front, where I don't go through like the 6-hour interview process of top grading like we used to. We hire almost entirely based on culture fit. We've hired a few people before. So like of everybody we've hired, I think we've only got, I think there's maybe 8 or 10 people that have been hired over the past 5 years of the company's existence that aren't here anymore. And every time we've lost somebody, whether we had to let them go or they left on their own accord to take, to pursue another opportunity, it was always that like they were not the right fit for the culture, and it was always me or the department head or the person who was making the decision on that hire sort of went against some of the red flags that were there at first, and it always ends up coming out to bite us in the ass in the end. So we definitely don't hire based on a traditional model. I also don't like. Success for this agency for me is a finite number of clients, and in order to support that finite number of clients, I'm only gonna need a finite number of resources. Like I'm not on the like grow to infinity train. I'm on the like get to this specific client count, start a waiting list, engineer for efficiency and maximize profit margins, and like live a fucking kick-ass life where you're still making a few $1 million a year.
Let's do the last question here. There is one in the chat from the Hobster, and he's just asked if you would answer it in text. He was going to email, but if you've got a minute to answer on YouTube, that would be cool.
Is it not in the group chat? I don't see it.
It's in the group chat, just up a little in on the YouTube chat from the Hobster. There's one more on topic one though for the live program answer. How does the program work? Assuming it's remote. What level of agency owners will you be working with, and just what sort of general requirements are you looking for people to work with you on the program?
Oh, cool. So yeah, it's a rolling 12-month program. It'll open March 18th, close March 20th. The first month it ends in March. It's a sprint, just to sort of prep for everything. So month 2 will kick off April 1st. The level of agency owners is, I don't think it's going to be a great fit for anybody who's not already at like $10,000 a month in revenue. Whether you're a freelancer or a consultant, or you're calling your business an agency, whatever that means to you. I think it's going to be hard for anybody who's not at least at that level to take advantage of putting some of the systems in place. But anywhere between 10 grand a month and 80 grand a month, I think there's significant value to be had. I even have talked to a handful of guys who are already doing, over $1 million a year with their agency, but they're struggling with some of the specific types of things that I cover in there. So yeah, there's an email coming this week to the list. If you're on the waiting list, there's an email coming with exactly what to expect and what it looks like. So I'm hoping to answer a bunch more of these questions outside of just the vague landing page that's up there now.